Hello guys and welcome. Finally, after 3 videos of just theoretical stuff, we are going to deep dive into code, the fun part. But I really thought that it was important to go through those concepts before jumping into understanding a .NET project. So let's now start with the really fun part, and you just need 2 requirements before being able to go with me in this lecture. You need to have installed Visual Studio. I'm using Visual Studio 2022, and also you need to have installed .NET 8. So please make sure to have those both installed before going into the video. I don't want to go into how to install them because I think that this is going to be a long video, so I don't want to distract you with that. So please make sure to search in case that you don't have them yet, how to install them. There's a lot of resources out there, and once you have them installed, you can follow me along. All right, so let's get into it. All right guys, so once you have opened Visual Studio 2022, you're going to have a UI like this. So we need to go into create a new project. In here, we're going to have different templates that basically are going to make our lives easier because it prevents us to need to write the different boilerplate to configure a project, for example, of Razor pages. As I told you before, that's the way of making a server-side templating project using .NET. Also, we have a web API. So these templates configure everything for us, but it can be kind of confusing in case you haven't deal with them before, because it basically seems that it is magic that is going, because you don't know exactly what is going on behind the scenes, right? So because of that, I want to start with a console application. As I told you before, every .NET Core application can start as a console app, and then you can start injecting some modules to convert your console application into something different, right? So in case you want Razor pages, in case you want a web API, and then you need to configure different things in your console application, and that's it. You configure whatever you need. So we're going to go through that. All right, so we click on console app. You can place whatever name you want. I'm going to say console app project test. Then you click on next. And now you're going to choose the .NET version that we're going to be using. In this case, I'm going to be using .NET 8 as it is the long-term support. And please do not check this checkbox of do not use top-level statements. Please check it because I want to explain something to you. So please check do not use top-level statements, all right? And then we can create a project, all right? So it is going to look something like this. Basically, on the right side, we're going to have the Solution Explorer, where we're going to have our project, as you can see the name that we defined. And then, as it is a basic console application, it is just going to create for us a program.cs file with this simple code, right? Where you have a static void main method, which basically this is the entry point of our application. Okay, so whenever we start our application, it is going to look for a main method that is declared in our code, and it is going to execute whatever is inside that method. Okay, so as you can see, we simply have a console.writeLine, which is basically going to write this as an output in our console. And then as we do not have anything else after that, it is going to simply terminate the project. So we're going to have that a look. So to run the project, you simply have to type in here or click in this arrow, and it is going to execute the project for us. As you can see, as it is a console application, it is simply going to execute a terminal with whatever we declared inside the main. So first it is going to look where the main method is, as it is right here, and it is going to execute whatever is inside in here. So as you can see, there's the output of hello world, and then it's simply finished because we don't have anything else after that. So that's the most simple of all .NET Core applications that we can have, right? But I think it is important to understand it before start configuring different kind of things. Okay, so as you saw before, I told you to not click on the checkbox of do not use top level statements, because we can do something to prevent having to write all this boilerplate. We can simply remove all of this, and we can say console.writeLine hello world without explicit main, for example. And as you are going to see, basically this is going to be the same as before. If I execute it, it is going to simply output the result and then exit. And this is because this term of top level statements was introduced so that we have to write less boilerplate. All right, so basically I want to top level statements were introduced just to write less boilerplate. Okay, because it simply creates an implicit main for us. So basically it is going to write that code that we saw before implicitly for us, so that the .NET Core project knows that this is inside a main, but we didn't have to write it ourselves, and it is going to execute it. So this is basically the same as having this other type of a structure. Okay, so basically it is going to create this for us so that our solution looks a little bit more clean, right? So I encourage you to use this way because it is way cleaner, and we need to write just less code, which is always a good practice. Okay, so as we can see here, this is the most simple of all type of applications, a simple console application, right? But as I told you before, we're going to be diving deep into what server-side rendering is, how we can achieve that with .NET Core, and also how we can achieve building web APIs. Okay, so I first want to go through the server-side rendering or templating approach. Okay, so it is going to get a little more complex, but as I told you before, we can just start with a console application like this, and we can start injecting different kind of modules to convert this console application that for now it is not anything else than a simply console app into a web application. Okay, so let's start. So now we are prepared to start converting our console app into a web application, right? So the first statement that you're going to be seeing anywhere in this type of application is the following. We're going to have a builder that I'm going to be explaining to you a little bit more what basically is this, but by convention it is called a builder, and it is going to be a web application dot create builder with args. And as a first step, you're going to be seeing that this is not recognized, and this is because of one important thing. If you go and click here in the name of your project, you're going to be seeing that you're going to have this file with which is so-called a .cs project file, all right, where basically this file contains all the necessary information so that the .NET tooling can build our project. Okay, so as you can see, it defines different things. For example, which type of project it is. This is a console application, so that's why it is not recognizing the web application. So we have to say that this is going to be a web app. So you say that using this SDK specifically, saying that it is going to be a web application. We also have, as it is going to be a web application, we do not need this output of X, right? And also we have some other things. For example, the version that we're using, in this case it's .NET 8. We have also other stuff that I don't want you to focus now because it might be confusing. But the main important thing is that now we're going to be creating a project of type web. Okay, so as you can see now, it is recognized. So we basically say that we want to create a builder of type web application. This is basically going to create for us some default configuration so that our application can start as a web application. Okay, so that it has the Kestrel running and some other things. So basically this simple line of code configures a lot of things behind the scenes so that we do not have to. Okay, so as the first statement, you're going to be seeing everywhere this declaration and a so-called builder. Okay, and that's basically the first step. All right, so now we use this builder basically to configure two main things. Okay, which one is adding the services into our application, and the other main thing is configuring the HTTP pipeline, or so-called middleware. Okay, so these basically are the two main things that we need to configure in our application when we are dealing with a web app. So in first place, as I told you before, we're going to be having like a place or a container where we can basically define all our dependencies, which is why this builder is able to have a place where we can configure all of this. Okay, so basically this serves as a container where we register all the dependencies that the application depends on, so our services will not worry on how to build those dependencies and just focus on the functionality. This may seem a little bit abstract right now, but as we are building more and more into this definition and into this project, it is going to become more and more clear. Okay, so now we have to configure or add our first service. So as you can see, this builder serves as the core of our application when we configure basically everything of our app, and also it has the Kestrel web server. So when we are dealing with Razor Pages or a Razor Pages project, then we need to first add our first service into this container that we can do by simply saying builder.services. This is basically, as you can see, a collection of services for the application to compose. This is useful for adding user provider or framework provided services. So these services serves like a iService collection, which basically is the container that I told you before that is going to hold all the different services that our application depends on, or all the dependencies. Okay, That's basically what you need to know now. But if we need to configure a Razor Pages project, then we need to say that into this container we want to add Razor Pages, which simply says add services for pages to that specified container. All right. So this basically does a lot of things behind the scenes, because for example it is going to add a number of services, for example for routing, for model binding, for caching also. So with this line of code we simply specify that we need to also add into our container the services that the Razor Pages depends on. Okay, so this is the first step, or the first dependency that we need to configure when we are dealing with a Razor Pages project. All right, so at this point of time we have configured first of all the builder, which as you can see it's of type web application builder, because basically we're telling that this application is going to be a web app, not a console application. So this builder helped us to like set all the configuration that we need by adding the different services that we're going to be using in this specific application. So we have our web application builder. In this builder we're going to say that basically we want to have a Razor Pages application by adding this Razor Pages service into the iService collection, right? Where we basically define all the different configuration services, dependencies and stuff. In here we tend to have a lot more things, but to just have a up and running Razor Pages application, this is the just one dependency that we need to register. And after we have registered all our dependencies, we can say var app equals builder.build, which is basically going to give us the instance of web application based on everything that we registered in here. So we know that this application, it's going to be a web application, so it's going to be has the Kestrel configured, listening to requests, and basically it knows that it should use Razor Pages for this specific application. All right, so when we specify that we want to build this builder with these specific requirements, then we have our application, so to say, and in this application is where we can configure then the so-called middleware or HTTP pipeline, as we're going to see. So basically a middleware or HTTP request pipeline is going to hold a lot of small components that are going to be executed in sequence. That's why it is called a pipeline. So for example, I have one in here, then I have another one in here, and then I had another one in here. These are going to be executed in sequence for each of the HTTP requests that enter into our application. Okay, so that's an important concept to have, because the order in which you define the different middleware components, it's pretty important, because the output of one component is going to serve as the input for the other one. So you need to define these components in which they have a logical order. Okay, but for now I'm not going to really deep dive into how to configure this middleware, because it is kind of complex, but I'm going to have a specific lecture for that later. But I just wanted you to know that this is where we define some behavior that we want all the different HTTP requests that hit our application, they can go through every kind of component middleware that we're defining here. So for example, if we want that all our applications pass through a filter, for example, of authenticated users, then we're going to say in here something like app.use authentication or authorization. All right. So there's a lot of things that the framework gives us out of the box that we can use, but for now we just are going to use one specific middleware that is going to help us to configure and build correctly the Razor Pages application, which is the following: app.map Razor Pages. As simple as that. So as you can see, it says add endpoints for Razor Pages to the iEndpoint router builder, which in other words basically specifies that it is going to know, for example, if a URL of the type localhost 3000, for example, /books enters our application, and in case we have a page for books, the framework is going to know exactly where it needs to look. Okay, so by basically using this specific middleware, it is going to, every time an HTTP request enters our application, it is going to look out the route of the request, and it is going to look if we have a corresponding route that matches the one that entered the request, and if so, it is going to execute the corresponding Razor page. Okay, it can be a little bit abstract right now, but we're going to see that with a simple example. All right, so we have come a long way now. We have created our builder, which is of type web application, right? That basically it is going to initialize a new instance of the web application builder, that is a place that we can use to configure our application with some pre-configured defaults that help us with or when creating a web application. So it is going to configure the Kestrel for us, also some different things regarding routing and some other pre-configured stuff. Once we have our builder, then we configure all the different services that it needs based on our needs, right? In this case, we simply are going to add a Razor Pages dependency. After we have configured all our services, we can build our builder, which is basically going to give us the instance with the configured web application based on what we needed. And after we have created our instance, we need to configure the request pipeline or middleware, that in our case we simply say that we need to map the different Razor pages so that our application knows what to execute based on the incoming HTTP request that enters into our application. So as you can see, we started as a console application. That's one thing that I told you in one of the videos before. Every .NET Core can start as a simple console application that we then can start configuring and adding different modules, configuration, dependencies and stuff to convert it into what we need. But we also add or just add the things that we need and nothing more, which is pretty important. As you can see, we just added 4 lines of code, and basically we have a configured web application up and running, listening to requests and using Razor Pages, which is the beauty of this framework, so that it gives you a lot of things out of the box, and we just need to know how to use them properly, okay? So once we have added everything that I have just explained, we can run or type app.run, which is basically going to run the application and block the calling thread until host shutdown. So basically it is going to block the calling thread. So it is not going to, for example, as the console application, that it started and then simply exited. This one is not going to exit. Just when the host is shut down, that we can specify that, for example, when an error occurs, if the server is shut down, or in some other situations, but it is going to be up and running until we define that it should no longer be accessible, okay? So with this 5 line of codes, we have configured everything. As you can see, when we changed our project from SDK to web, then it basically created for us this properties folder with the launch settings.json, which is basically a profile that it uses to know where to launch our application. So in case we now start our application, it is going to be listening on this specific URL, or in this one in case we're using HTTP. For now, for sake of simplicity, please remove the HTTPS one, so that it is going to be just listening on this specific URL and port, okay? And one thing to know is that we have not configured any pages yet, okay? One important thing is that as this is a framework, we need to follow the rules. So now, in case we want to run our application, we're going to see that we're not going to get any errors. So as you can see, for now, the UI changed. As you can see, we have the memory, we have some other stuff running. We didn't, or the application didn't finish as the console because of this app.run, which basically is going to block the calling thread. And so until we shut down it manually, or it reaches some point in our code where we specify that it should shut down, it is going to be listening for requests. But at this point of time, as you can see, it tried to go to this specific URL, which in this case is the same one as we defined in here. So basically it is saying that in case we are in development mode, it should start on this specific URL, as you can see, the 52071, because we are in development mode, not production. And it is trying to access this specific route, but we have not configured yet any page to match this specific route, which is the same as this, right? This is like the root of our application. So for example, in case we want to configure something, we need to manually do it, because right now what is happening is that basically as we have this middleware configured, our application run, it reach this specific URL, then it is going to try and map that specific URL to a URL that we have configured in our application, or with a page that we have configured. But at this point of time, we have nothing. To make this work, we have to configure a page that matches the URL that is right now, which is basically the root of our application. So whenever we want to register a new page, we need to do it inside a folder called pages, which is basically a rule of the framework. So I think I need to stop the application in order to rename it. So we can say pages. All right. And in here, we can add a new razor page. We can add a new empty razor page. That is okay. And we have to call it index.cshtml. All right. So basically, if we have a index.cshtml file in our application inside pages, it is going to match exactly the root of our application. So for example, if we have another one, if we have another folder called books, and in here we specify another razor page called index, we're going to see the differences between both of them. All right. I don't want you to focus right now on this CSHTML because I want to have a new video just focusing on that. But as we can see, it created two files, one with this structure that is basically what is going to be rendered into the application. So we can write in here HTML. So we can say root of our application, right? And in case we want to go to the books one, we're going to say that we want to have in each one also with all my books, something like that. Okay. This inside have a C# file which is called a handler, but I'm going to come into this later. For now, basically what I want you to know is that in case that you want your application to render something in the root URL, then you need to have a index.cshtml inside the pages. And whenever you want to handle other different kind of routes, then you can have a folder for that specific route that you want to handle, and then in here you can have the different files. So we can give this another run. Okay, I'm going just to close all these files right now, and we can run our application again, and let's see what happens this time. Okay. So as you can see, this time it gave no error, because what basically happened is that our application ran. This request came into our application, which is basically the root of our application. It hit our middleware pipeline where it said like, okay, I received a request to the root of the application. Do we have a page to handle this one? Then it goes into the pages folder, looks in case we have a view or a razor page that handles the root request, and we have one, which is this one, and it is going to render whatever is inside in here, which is the root of our application, as you can see in here. So for example, if then we want to access the books one, we simply need to say /books, and as you can see, it says all my books, which is the file that we define for this specific route. Okay, so this is like the way that you need to define the routes inside your application based on the rules of the framework. So in case, for example, if I try to go to some route that I have not handled, because at this point of time we just have two, one for the root of our application, which is the URL that gets triggered whenever we simply start our application, or the books one, which is the one that we defined ourselves. But in case I want some other route, for example library, that we haven't defined, it is going to give an error, because basically, and we have some logs about what is going on. It basically said that request reached the end of the middleware pipeline without being handled by application code. because it went in here in this middleware. The middleware tried to map the incoming request to a corresponding page, but it didn't find anything. So basically, none of the middleware was able to handle the request. And if that happens, it is going to throw an error, which in this case we can see that it is a 404 error of not found. But in case we specify something that we do handle, then it is going to give us specifically what we have inside of there, which in this case is all my books. Okay, so congratulations, you have created a up and running Razor Pages application. You have understand now what you need to do in order to configure a web application in .NET Core if you want to add Razor Pages. You have also learned a little bit of the middleware, also why it is used, and how to configure the different routes in our application, which is the basis when you need to create your application, or is going to be the base of any .NET Core applications. So I think that it was really important to take my time and explain step by step what all of this configuration means, how a .NET Core application works, why does it work that way. And of course, there's a lot of things that need more explanation, like what can I configure in this iService collection container, what other kind of HTTP request middleware can I configure, and how can I configure them, what kind of options does the framework give to me, how, for example, handle different kind of routes. For example, if I want to have I am sure that you have seen something like um, books/1, in case we want to search for one book specifically. Some other concepts like that, we're going to deep dive into that. Also, like creating forms for sending back data, managing databases, and all of those good stuff. I'm going to go through that, but when the time comes. I think that this is really good for a really basic understanding of how a .NET Core application works and how to set it up with no template, just from a simple console application. So we do it all ourselves, and you typed it and you understood what you were doing, which I think is pretty important. So I hope that this lecture helped you understanding how all this works behind the scenes. And thank you for sticking with me in this long one, because I think that it is going to be like 30 minutes or something, but I really wanted to take my time. And if you have any questions, suggestions, anything, please let me know in the comments, and I'm going to respond as soon as possible. And I'm excited that we already reached code. We wrote our first lines of code, and we're going to be understanding more and more how to take advantage of this awesome framework. So I hope that you enjoyed it, that it was useful, and I see you in the next one. Bye bye.